Hello everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I am your resident fantasy therapist and welcome to my channel. Those of you who are brand new, welcome. Those of you who are coming back, welcome back. Those of you who have not been here before, my name is Kat Bowser and I am a licensed therapist. I am also an author working on my current debut novel, Coexist Division. So on my channel, I like to talk about all things writing, world building, everything that falls in between with a psychology angle. Being a therapist, I really can't not have a psychology angle. So today, given that it is Mental Health Awareness Month, I wanted to talk about something that has been on my mind for a while, and that is the term crazy in fiction and why you're probably using it wrong. Okay, so the term crazy originated, we believe, in the mid-1500s, and it was a term that meant someone was diseased or ill, but it eventually became mainly associated with people who have what we recognize today as mental illness. And it started to be applied to basically anyone that fell outside of the societal norms. So it kind of evolved as society evolved. I mean, if you can look at the early 1900s, and a woman could essentially be sent to an asylum for disagreeing with her husband. So that's where the term crazy comes from. The term insane is actually a legal definition more than anything, and it is usually applied to mean someone cannot differentiate between fantasy and reality. And I bring up those two definitions because clinically, you will never hear either of them used. As a therapist, I never use insane, I never use crazy. If you look through any of my clinical notes, you may find descriptions of behaviors that people typically associate with the word crazy, but you will never find the word itself because it is not a clinical term. What you will find is a definition of individual is experiencing hallucinations and has difficulty determining reality from hallucinations. You may find something along the lines of is exhibiting paranoid delusions, things of that nature. So why do I bring this up? Well, it actually has been something that's been on my mind for a while because I see it used a lot in fiction. Normally it's actually directed at the villain, which is understandable, but most of the time it actually is used incorrectly. And given that this is Mental Health Awareness Month, I thought it'd be kind of a good topic to dive into a little bit. So, like we discussed, crazy is essentially not being able to tell reality from fantasy. And in clinical terms, when we would potentially petition someone, it would be either because they are not safe for themselves, they're not safe towards others, or they are what we call persistently acutely disabled. And what that means is that they cannot care for themselves, they cannot perform their ADLs, they cannot cook for themselves, things like that. And it's actually very hard to petition someone because essentially when you petition someone, you're saying to a judge, I don't think this person has the capacity to make decisions for themselves that are safe, so we need to have the state step in and make the decision for them. So in terms of fiction, this is not when it is used. It is typically used to describe a villain's warpath, their plan to eliminate, the hero, eliminate their family, destroy villages, all that lovely stuff that villains like to do. But that does not meet the criteria for quote-unquote crazy. That meets the type criteria for someone being a jerk. And I really think it's important to make this differentiation because I actually hear it a lot from people even now talking about horrible things that people have done, saying, well, they must be crazy because why would anyone who is sane do this kind of stuff? And I think that takes away responsibility from the person in a sense, because a lot of times when we refer to someone as crazy, in our minds we're saying, okay, they're not responsible for their actions, so therefore whatever they did, it's not looked upon at its full scale of what it actually did. A good example of this is I was actually discussing this with my parents. My parents have a hard time with this. we were discussing some serial killers that had come up in the news. And my mom made the comment that, well, they must be crazy because, they're hurting all these people, they're killing all these people. But here's the crux of it. Did they realize what they were doing was going to hurt someone? And if they did they just not care? And to me, that actually makes a scarier villain, because someone who does something because they are literally in a state where they cannot tell fantasy from reality, they do not know what their actions are going to do, that's not someone that I'm going to hate, that's someone I'm going to want to help, because they are a victim. Someone who does something knows full well the damage that it's going to do, and they just don't give a damn, that's someone I can hate. So what can we do in terms of literature in response to this idea? Well, I think there's actually two things we can do. One, if you use the term crazy in your story, I would prefer if you use it correctly. Mainly that it is only used to refer to someone who literally cannot tell the difference between reality and fantasy. And honestly, I would actually prefer if we kind of ease this term out, because it's not a nice term. It's become accepted in society as like this colloquial term. But I think the more that we can kind of phase it out, the better. It would be better if people could start using the correct terms to describe the behaviors that people are having. Okay, well, that person is seeing things that aren't there. They're hearing things that aren't there. They don't realize the difference between what they think is happening and what's really happening, because that gives a clearer picture. When we hear the term crazy, we automatically have associated images that come up, and almost none of them are good. Second thing we can do, give your heroes some mental disorders, because they are everywhere. I really wish I had my DSM with me right now, but it's at my work. The DSM is what we use to diagnose mental disorders. And currently there are 947 of them. And I can guarantee you that most people that have them do not meet the criteria of what we would call acutely disabled or danger to self, danger to others. Because you can have a mental disorder and still function. You can have a mental disorder and be a nice person. You can have a mental disorder and live a full, fulfilling life. But the reason that people don't think that is because we have this very nasty stigma against it, which honestly I really wish would go away, because mental health and physical health are connected. They are a circle. They are not separate entities. If I have someone that I am treating and they are having if they're having hallucinations, the first thing I'm going to ask them is, have they taken any substances? Are they getting enough sleep? Because if you go without sleep for something like 3 to 4 days, you're going to start seeing some stuff. Likewise, if someone has an anxiety problem, but they're not eating well, or they have a lot of what we call socioeconomic stressors, lack of income, family that doesn't understand what their issues are, so they're pressuring them, that can affect how their illness manifests itself. So the reason we have this stigma is because every single movie, every single book lately that has come out that has mental illness in it, the mental illness is usually associated with the bad guy or with someone who is uncaring. Take your poison, pick your poison. But if we start to associate some of these things with heroes, or even with people who are morally gray, it gives it more of a human angle. If I have a person who is my hero of my story, and he has some anxiety, or he has PTSD, or he has a eating disorder, that makes it more human. That takes away everybody that has bipolar acts like this, everybody that has PTSD acts like this. It gives it more of a variety, and it makes it more accessible for people to understand, because when we first learn about things like bipolar, schizophrenia, we have very distinct ideas in our head about what they look like, and almost all of them are not correct. Especially in terms of schizophrenia, I have lost count of the number of movies and books that display someone with schizophrenia as a dangerous person who is going to hurt someone. That is extremely rare. I'd say maybe 2% of people that have schizophrenia will be dangerous to other people. Most of the time, if they're going to be dangerous to anyone, they're going to be dangerous to themselves. But we don't learn about that because the media is stuck in this idea of, well, we have to present mental illness as this horrible bad thing, and that's not true. I would say most of the people that you encounter on everyday life, probably 6 out of 10 of them is going to have some kind of mental disorder. Whether it's diagnosed is another issue. So I thought this would be a good topic to bring up, just to keep in mind as you're writing through your story. 1, do your research. If you're going to include mental disorder in your story, which I highly recommend you do, talk to people that have it, read up on it, learn how it manifests, learn how it presents itself, learn what might trigger it, because you want to be accurate. There's something called sensitivity readers, and they are awesome. I've used quite a few of them myself. And you can always present to them, hey, I'm writing a story that has someone that has borderline personality disorder. I'm writing a story of someone that has autism. I'm writing a story of someone that has anorexia. And ask them to flip through it and say, okay, here's where you need to fix this. Here's where you're fine. Here's what needs improvement. That way you're presenting the disorder as not this horrible, horrible thing, but as something that people live with. And they are still very nice, very competent people. And this second thing you can do, like I said, I really think we should try to phase out the term crazy, because it really hurts people. But it's become so ingrained in our culture that, I mean, people drop this word everywhere, oh, he's crazy, she's crazy, that's crazy. And if we can start to use it less, then I think that overall helps everybody. Now, am I saying that you shouldn't have your characters use it at all in your story? No, I'm not saying that, because let's face it, if you're writing an urban-based story, that would not be very accurate, because like I said, we drop it everywhere. But what I would like to see, though, is if it is used, and if it's used incorrectly, I'd love to see people correcting people on it. Say, no, they're actually not crazy, she's dealing with this, or her husband just died, or whatever it is that you're having to put in your story. And these are small things that people can do, but I think overall they really build up to having a big effect. Alright guys, so that's all I've got for you today. I just wanted to touch on this topic a little bit because it is something that I see a lot, and like I said, it's just one of my things. I don't like seeing it used incorrectly, and I think that writers, especially, we have more influence on people than we realize. So if we can start to phase out these incorrect terms and phase in these ideas that, yes, people that have mental disorders are real people and they have real problems, but they are not these scary, horrible people that the media portrays them as. And any step we can take towards fixing that idea is awesome. So those of you who stopped in for the first time, I'm glad you did. I hope to see you again soon. As always, you can follow me on social media, and if you have any comments or questions, please drop them below. I'll be glad to read them. Until then, I will see you guys next time.